The Donald Trump story yesterday, very interesting, and Dawn highlighted it brilliantly with the way it was covered by the media with the headlines. Let's just kind of bury the big portion of it, the rape claim of E. Jean Carroll being rejected. But let's lead with he's found liable for defamation and abuse, and he has to pay $5 million in damages, which for Donald Trump is like Odyssey taxing me an extra $27. It's not that big of a deal when it comes to Donald Trump and his finances. So yesterday, E. Jean Carroll, a writer, was awarded $5 million by a Manhattan jury that found Trump liable for sexually abusing and defaming her while clearing him of the rape claim. Carroll is 79 years old, and she made this allegation and claims that this happened in a Bergdorf Goodman fitting room, a department store, back in 1996. So, weird stuff happens, but I think when you're Donald Trump and you're in a big-time department store, I'm not sure that you actually can pull off a rape in a fitting room without anybody noticing, but that was her claim. And we have these pending criminal cases that are now piling up for Trump. Obviously, we know about the hush money case with Alvin Bragg. But this jury that consisted of 9 individuals, 3 women, 6 men, took all of 3 hours to deliberate. And this happened just before noon on Tuesday. And they came back and said, nope, not liable for the rape, but you do owe $5 million in damages for defamation and sexual abuse, to which Donald Trump responded on Truth Social saying, quote, I have absolutely no idea who this woman is. This verdict is a disgrace and a continuation of the greatest witch hunt of all time. So, you get Trump in Manhattan, and when you're in one of these adversarial settings and you have a case and you have a jury, you're supposedly amongst your peers. Although I do find it hard to believe, and this is going to be the same thing with every Trump case moving forward. I really do find it hard to believe that you can find an unbiased jury. And I know there's the voir dire process, and you go through jury selection, and you try to, stack the deck if you're the prosecutor, or you try to stack the deck if you're the defense attorney, or in this case, the civil attorneys, and you try to find the people that are best for your side of the story in your case. I just find it hard to believe that there's people in America today that don't have some predisposition or a belief or a set of thoughts in advance on Donald Trump. So I don't know that he would ever get a genuinely unbiased jury in New York City. But I do think the one thing worth pointing out here is, with this being a civil case, the burden of proof is much lower. The burden of proof in a civil case is the preponderance of the evidence, whereas in a criminal case, the prosecutor has to prove it beyond a reasonable doubt. So for those that might not understand those two different terminologies, to quantify it, typically a preponderance of the evidence, it needs to be more likely than not. However you want to frame that. Is it a 52% chance that it was more likely? Was it 55-45? It's a little bit more than a coin flip, so to speak. Whereas beyond a reasonable doubt, it's like 75, 80, 85%. It is almost a certainty that this guy did what he's accused of doing. So those are two things I think that are worth pointing out. And I say all of that, Dawn, to say this. Much like a jury not having a thought on Trump already, and I don't think that that's a possibility, I don't know that this changes anything for Trump in 2024, because from a voting standpoint, much like a jury standpoint, you probably already have your thoughts and your opinions on Donald J. Trump.
I put a little extra lipstick on so you can read my lips when I say this.
Beautiful. This is dark back there, by the way.
This is a problem, unfortunately.
You do think that?
The deposition, first of all, how does this even get to trial? Because if I'm an attorney, for him, I don't want this to go to trial. Obviously, they didn't have him on the stand. So last October, there was a deposition.
Yeah.
The deposition tape, CNN just runs it all the time.
It was a video deposition.
It was, yes.
Yeah.
But they're playing it, whether you're hearing it on whatever podcast, it's everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not great.
Mm-hmm.
This is bad for Trump. If I'm Caitlin Collins, which I'm not, on CNN, I'm asking about this. And now he's got his advisors have to tell him, Mr. President, because you would call somebody, Jimmy Matthews, if you're listening, you would call somebody the president if you're present with him. Okay, so don't DM me. I have to say it because Jimmy's LaSalle College High School grad, so
Okay.
I love him. All right. Here's the deal. If you're Caitlin Collins, you would be like negligent if you did not ask about this. You must ask about it.
I would agree with that.
The deal is that if Trump had never acknowledged this woman's, and by the way, she was married. The man in the picture that you see was a very famous, legendary anchorman, John Johnson, in New York City. So we wouldn't know that because we're here in Philadelphia, but it would be like, if somebody were married to like Jim Gardner.
And that was her husband.
That was her husband.
Gotcha.
Who clearly that's who Trump is talking to
Yeah.
at a gala or whatever it is. He has his first wife, his late wife, Ivana Trump, next to him.
That was Marla Maples, wasn't it?
This is the problem number 2, is that they show him the picture and he goes, "Oh, that's Marla." Well, Ivana is next to him. He's looking at the photo and he says, "That's Marla," who is a very beautiful woman. And so that kind of refutes the whole statement that, she's not my type.
Right.
So to me, this is a disaster. And here's the issue, that if you're logical, you're going to look at this and go, it was a civil thing. It was 30 some years later. The jury did not even believe her. That's a logical way to think.
Yeah.
But the problem is this is being blown up all over the place in the so-called mainstream media. And if you watch that deposition tape, he's clearly agitated, and he's saying that the guy examining him or questioning him is a disgrace. This is a hoax. Wasn't even attracted to her. Doesn't address the questions, and then talks about the Access Hollywood tape, which is not great, and says things that are just not prudent to say on a videotape, deposition, or any place.
So you
Please,
think
God.
You think the deposition works against him as if, to the equivalent if he was on the stand and made a fool of himself?
It's worse.
Okay.
Well, the Access Hollywood tape didn't hurt him in 2016.
But this is different because the context is different, and you have a very sympathetic jury, but you also have a sympathetic woman who's nearly 80 years old, and now her accuser isn't there, so she's home field advantage. Hello.
Yeah.
What's the voter ratio in Manhattan?
4-1, at least.
Yeah. It's here in Philadelphia we're 7-1. I would say they're like 8-1.
Okay. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, sure.
So I just think this whole thing, it's a disaster. And so it plays to the women's vote. And that's all this really, ultimately, that's what this was about. You already were in trouble as a 24 contender with the whole abortion issue. And now you've got this hot mess that's being walloped over everybody's head.
So you think he loses any of the independent or moderate women that maybe were on the fence with this?
Yeah, I just think this is a real problem. And if he had just never commented on this woman's book that came out decades after, if he had never said anything, this wouldn't have happened.
See, I think she's a bit of a kook, and I'm going to play.
Nick, that crazy chick,
I know.
everybody agrees. Like, okay, you can say that, but
Yep.
this is a problem.
Let's take a listen. Here's E. Jean Carroll on with Anderson Cooper on CNN, and I believe she leaves Anderson speechless, which is really not hard to do if you've ever watched that show. Take a listen.
I feel like a victim.
I was not thrown on the ground and ravished, which the word rape carries so many sexual connotations. This was not sexual. It hurt.
But I think most people think of rape as it is a violent assault. It is not.
I think most people think of rape as being sexy.
I know
Let's
that
take a
that's
short break.
taken out of
Think of the fantasies.
context, but that's not what she's saying is, in other words, you think of old movies where it's like a fantasy situation. So she's saying it hurt. What she's trying to say, and I'm just interpreting this is how a lot of women are going to look at this who've been assaulted or whatever. And what she's saying is that rape is considered, like in the movies in Hollywood, as if it is quote unquote sexy. But she's saying it hurt, and I think many could perceive that she's talking about perceptions of what happens with this. I'm just trying to give the other side of this.
No, I totally get that, yeah.
Right, because everybody after the last primary was blindsided by the abortion issue and how much that impacted the primary election. On top of that, There were many other issues, but everybody seemed to be blindsided by that. This one, everybody has to have eyes wide open and understand what's going on here.
I tried to peel it back a couple of layers last night, and I said, okay, he was found not liable for rape, so let's throw that out right there. I don't think anybody really cares.
You're being logical.
I don't think anybody really cares on either side about the defamation, right? Because Trump could say whatever he wants. Trump just, he types in all capital letters. He verbally goes after everybody that's not a fan of him, and $5 million means nothing to him. So I take that out of the equation. But I take the liable for sexual abuse, that little nugget right there. And to your point, and to my point earlier, I say, okay, was there any individual or individuals that were on the fence about Trump, or maybe that were so down on Biden that said, you know what, things were much better under Trump, and I'll be objective, but now I can't vote for him because he was found liable for sexual abuse? I think you're saying that is the case here.
And again, I'm teasing you a little bit, Nick Kayal, as I say, you're being logical. And I'm teasing because, of course, we're logical here in this space. We're logical. If you look at this, his attorneys are already appealing it because it was a civil rape trial, and they didn't get that to stick.
Yeah.
So if you're the attorney, you're saying, hey, we've got this. It's a victory. But that's not what we're talking about. You're looking at how many people really decide a presidential election? Less than 80,000, 60,000 people? How many really, that tiny little sliver in the country? And so this is a victory for the left, and because they're going to play this thing to the hilt. And so here are your choices, America, if these are the choices you end up with. On the left, you've got a guy, and we saw him at the live news conference last night, Joe Biden, where he had a pretty, you look, he's doing pretty well because, of course, a bunch of the media was kept out, and I know you'll get into that.
Yeah.
But you've got that guy who he might be a little old, but, he's who we know, and he's a nice old man, and that's on your left.
Yep.
And then on the right, you've got the guy who says, yeah, well, women get grabbed in the beep, and you've heard that tape a million times, and so you go, I just can't stand that guy on the right. Mm-hmm. And that's what they want.
Yep.
So this is a win-win-win for the left, for Democrats. They're going to raise money on this. They're going to campaign on this. And you're going to hear that stinking deposition tape until you're just sick and tired of it.
It's funny to hear all of the people yesterday who are taking victory laps on this, and they just got all the facts wrong.
I know.
It's like he was convicted of rape. First of all, he was not convicted of anything. He was not found liable for rape.
Right.
It was sexual assault, which is.
Half the people don't even realize this was a civil case.
Exactly.
Everybody's like, convicted sexual offender or sexual, like, it's like, no. It was a civil trial.
Yeah.
But, Greg, to your point, how many times has Greg Stocker said, nobody should get their news off of Twitter? How many times have you said that? The problem is, so many do.
Yep.
And that's what they're banking on. They're banking on, and you can say it's fake news, but it's by omission and also by ignorance, because we have to blame the consumer too.
Yep.
And so this was a huge, huge victory for the left and for Democrats, and it should not. I cannot stress this enough.
Nick, what do you think? I mean, the burden tonight is on Caitlin Collins.
Oh,
and
no
by the
question.
way, what a gift for CNN.
Oh, yeah.
Isn't this?
This is perfect timing for them.
Gift
Yes.
for CNN. They're going to get so many eyeballs tonight.
No
it's not even funny. The burden is on her. How do you handle this?